The world of Coruscant had always been a beacon of order and civilization, its vast cityscape a testament to the unity and strength of the Galactic Republic. But as Order 66 descended upon the galaxy, it shattered the very foundations of that unity, sending shockwaves of fear, confusion, and betrayal throughout the capital. The immediate aftermath of the Order on Coruscant was chaos cloaked in military precision, the sudden shift from Republic to Empire masked by strategic brutality. Night blanketed the city, but Coruscant had never been one to sleep. The city planet pulsed with life, lights flickering from thousands of speeders racing through the air, and holo billboards casting their neon glow across towering buildings. It was here, in the heart of the Republic, that the Jedi had made their stand. Their temple, a monumental structure, rose above the landscape, a silent guardian watching over Coruscant's inhabitants. But now, it had become a target, an icon of hope, now under siege by the very soldiers sworn to protect it. Troopers moved through the streets with unyielding resolve, their armor gleaming under the city lights, blasters at the ready. They advanced in disciplined ranks toward the temple, where smoke billowed from the structure, a grim testament to the violence unfolding within. Civilians watched, their expressions filled with confusion and fear, as the soldiers marched in formation, eerily silent despite the rapid beat of their steps. No explanations were given, no warnings issued. It was a night of quiet terror, as citizens realized something unprecedented was unfolding before them, something that felt like an end to the world they knew. Inside the temple, the Jedi scrambled, trying to make sense of the sudden assault. They had been caught off guard, betrayed by soldiers they had fought alongside in battle after battle. The younglings, wide-eyed and clutching their training sabers, were shepherded deeper into the temple by the few remaining Jedi masters. Every hallway echoed with the sounds of battle blaster fire, lightsabers igniting, and the screams of the wounded. Jedi who had known peace and had sworn themselves to the protection of others found themselves forced into a desperate fight for survival, with little hope of victory. The younger Jedi, recently knighted and untested by war, struggled to maintain composure. They had trusted their clone allies, bonded with them during the Clone Wars. But now, these soldiers, with their stoic faces hidden behind cold helmets, moved through the temple with deadly efficiency, their blasters aimed with ruthless precision. It was a betrayal that cut deeper than any blade, a sense of profound loss that weakened even the strongest Jedi's resolve. Coruscant's citizens, loyal and dedicated to the Republic, watched in horror as reports spread like wildfire. Rumors of Jedi betrayal filled the airwaves, propaganda portraying them as traitors attempting to usurp power. Holoscreens throughout the city displayed Chancellor Palpatine's face, his voice dripping with false authority as he declared the Jedi a threat to peace. His words resonated in public squares, in marketplaces, and in homes, sowing seeds of doubt and mistrust. Many civilians listened in confusion, unwilling to believe the Jedi were the traitors Palpatine claimed they were. But fear is a powerful force. The citizens of Coruscant, caught between loyalty to the Republic and admiration for the Jedi, found themselves in a web of uncertainty and trepidation. The clone troopers patrolled the streets, enforcing curfews with an iron fist, their presence a chilling reminder of the shifting power. The citizens felt the weight of the regime bearing down on them, the freedom they had once enjoyed seemingly slipping away. Each corner of the city seemed colder, more desolate, as the clones seized control over key areas, ensuring that any spark of rebellion would be crushed before it could ignite. The Empire was taking form with frightening speed, spreading its influence with calculated ruthlessness. Yet, amid the oppressive silence, a few dared to resist. Underground networks that had once been sympathetic to the Jedi found themselves drawn together, whispering plans of sanctuary and escape. Some citizens risked their lives, secretly aiding the Jedi or providing shelter to those on the run. Smugglers, former mercenaries, and even a few retired soldiers saw the Empire's birth as a threat and moved in the shadows, offering what little help they could to those in need. In the temple, the horrors continued. Anakin Skywalker, once hailed as the Chosen One, strode through the halls with a cold, ruthless determination. Now known as Darth Vader, he led the assault against his former brothers and sisters, wielding his lightsaber with a mastery that struck fear into all who faced him. Those Jedi who recognized him were stunned, unable to reconcile the hero of the Clone Wars with the brutal figure slaughtering Jedi, without hesitation. His presence brought a wave of despair, a reminder that even the most revered could fall. Younglings hid in small corners, clutching their training sabers, their frightened whispers silenced by the approaching footsteps of the clones and their new Sith commander. Masters fought valiantly, their lightsabers flashing in the darkness as they defended their charges, but the numbers were against them. Many fell, their bodies lying alongside the broken relics of the Jedi's past, a testament to the ruthless efficiency of the clones and the betrayal of the man once known as Anakin. Outside the temple, Coruscant was blanketed in an eerie calm. The sound of blasters and screams was muffled by the thick walls, but the tension could be felt even by those unaware of the atrocities within. The familiar hum of speeders and chatter of citizens was absent, replaced by a suffocating quiet that echoed through the air. The nightlife of Coruscant, always vibrant and bustling, was subdued, the few people brave enough to venture outside walking quickly, eyes averted from the troopers now stationed on every corner. The Senate building, once a symbol of hope and democracy, now loomed over the city like a shadow. Its halls were filled with whispers of the Chancellor's new order, his plans to reshape the galaxy under the Empire. Senators who had once championed the Republic sat in silence, some in shock, others in silent agreement with the Chancellor's vision of a safer galaxy. Those who dared to protest found themselves silenced, their voices drowned out by the new wave of loyalty demanded by the Empire. The planet of Coruscant, always resilient and proud, began to feel the strain of the new regime. The city's lights, once a symbol of its vitality, seemed dimmer, the buildings taller and more imposing as the Empire's grip tightened. Fear permeated the air, an unspoken understanding that the world they once knew was gone. The immediate aftermath of Order 66 was not just the death of the Jedi, it was the birth of something dark, a shadow that would loom over Coruscant and the galaxy for years to come. For now, the people waited, watching as the Empire took shape before their eyes, powerless to stop it, their hope fading as the night wore on. The betrayal of the Jedi was only the beginning. The true face of the Empire had yet to reveal itself fully, but the darkness was there, lurking, growing stronger with each passing hour. And in the heart of Coruscant, the cries of the fallen Jedi echoed, a final plea for justice that would never be answered. As dawn approached, the fires from the Jedi Temple still smoldered, casting an ominous glow against the muted light breaking over Coruscant's skyline. The initial shock of the attack had given way to a grim acceptance among the city's citizens. Troopers continued to patrol every major district, ensuring compliance with the Chancellor's new directives. Curfews remained strictly enforced, and any hint of resistance was immediately quelled. The city was transforming, its identity reshaped in the wake of Order 66. The civilians, meanwhile, were left in a tense state of apprehension. For many, the Jedi had been symbols of peace and justice. They'd grown up hearing tales of Jedi valor, watching as Jedi intervened in conflicts across the galaxy, upholding the Republic's ideals. To now be told they were traitors to the Republic struck a chord of disbelief, but the sheer power of the propaganda machine was relentless. Holoscreens in public areas replayed the Chancellor's declaration, his voice commanding and unyielding as he spoke of a new order. A galactic empire that would bring peace and security. In the poorer districts, far from the Temple and the Senate, many inhabitants held their own suspicions about the events unfolding. The Jedi had seldom been seen here, and those who watched from the fringes were less likely to trust the official narrative. Still, fear kept them silent. They watched the patrols pass by, careful to avoid any unnecessary attention. The troopers were thorough, their armor and blasters a clear message of the consequences for dissent. Any who spoke out were quickly silenced, a lesson that spread like wildfire through the back alleys and markets. Inside the Senate building, the political climate had turned cold and calculating. Palpatine's influence over the Senate was absolute, and most senators recognized that resistance was futile, if not outright dangerous. Even those who harbored doubts kept them hidden, their loyalty to the Republic overpowered by a survival instinct. Among the few who dared to speak out, Senator Bail Organa was notably troubled, his mind racing as he tried to process the sudden turn of events. He'd seen the destruction of the Jedi Temple firsthand, the horrifying reality of troopers gunning down their former allies, but he also understood the stakes any open opposition could result in his own swift removal or worse. Palpatine, meanwhile, reveled in his newfound control. With each passing hour, he solidified his grip over Coruscant and the galaxy at large. The Senate was now a mere formality, its members reduced to little more than mouthpieces for his decrees. He watched as his directives spread through the city, his voice and vision shaping the future of the galaxy, a vision in which the Jedi were extinct, their ideals buried under the iron heel of his empire. Within the temple, the devastation was absolute. The structure, once a sanctuary, lay in ruins, its halls littered with the bodies of Jedi, young and old. The clone troopers were meticulous in their sweep, ensuring that no survivors remained to challenge the new regime. Even in death, the Jedi held an aura of dignity, but the brutality of their slaughter left a mark on those who bore witness. Some troopers, despite their programmed loyalty, felt a vague unease. They were soldiers, not executioners, and this massacre left an indelible stain on their ranks. But any sign of hesitation was quickly suppressed, a reminder that they too were tools in the service of the Empire. Vader, at the heart of the carnage, stood as the embodiment of Palpatine's vision. He moved with purpose, every strike of his lightsaber a calculated blow against those who had once been his friends, his mentors. Any who challenged him found themselves overwhelmed, his power an unstoppable force. The few Jedi who managed to escape fled through secret passages and concealed exits, their hearts heavy with grief, their future uncertain. They left behind a temple now scarred and desecrated, a symbol of hope turned into a symbol of oppression. As the sun rose, the city's citizens began to emerge from their homes, cautiously stepping into the streets now patrolled by clone troopers. The events of the previous night had left an imprint on Coruscant's psyche, a silent understanding that the galaxy had changed irrevocably. People went about their business with their heads lowered, avoiding eye contact with the soldiers stationed on every corner. Vendors opened their stalls with a palpable reluctance, and the usual vibrant hum of the marketplaces was subdued, replaced by a nervous quiet. Conversations were held in hushed tones, whispers filling the air as the populace tried to make sense of the Empire's swift takeover. Yet even in this environment of fear and suspicion, a few dared to resist, if only in small ways. The underground networks that had supported the Jedi during the war now found themselves reactivated, whispers of rebellion passing between trusted allies. Messages were exchanged in code, and contacts were re-established with off-world sympathizers. There was a sense of desperation, but also a spark of defiance, a refusal to submit completely to the new order. The Jedi who had managed to evade capture scattered across Coruscant, blending into the crowds or finding refuge in the city's forgotten districts. Some sought the assistance of those they'd once protected, hiding in basements and abandoned buildings, their lightsabers tucked away, the symbol of their order now a liability. The knowledge that their brethren had fallen weighed heavily on them, yet they remained determined to survive, clinging to the faint hope that they might one day restore the Jedi Order and bring justice to those responsible for the massacre. Coruscant, once a center of culture and progress, had been transformed overnight. It now bore the mark of oppression, a coldness settling over its sprawling districts. For those who had known the city in its golden years, the change was almost too much to bear. The familiar sights and sounds were still present, but they were muted, as though the city itself were holding its breath, awaiting what was to come. The Empire wasted no time in consolidating its power. The military presence was expanded, with additional troopers deployed to maintain order and enforce the new laws. Surveillance intensified, with scanners and probes monitoring every corner of Coruscant's sprawling metropolis. Those who dared to resist, even in minor ways, were swiftly identified and dealt with, a show of force to remind the population of the Empire's absolute authority. The propaganda continued, shifting its focus from the Jedi traitors to the promise of stability and security. The citizens were told that the days of war were over, that the chaos of the Clone Wars had finally been resolved, and that the Empire would usher in a new era of peace. But the peace offered was a hollow one, born of fear and submission rather than trust and unity. For many, the weight of the Empire's rule was already beginning to settle on their shoulders, an invisible burden that would only grow heavier with time. In the shadows, however, seeds of rebellion were sown. People remembered the Republic, remembered the ideals of freedom and democracy, and though they were frightened, they were not entirely broken. Small acts of defiance emerged, individuals working to preserve pieces of the old ways, storing holocrons, documents, and relics that spoke of a different time. They were aware that open resistance was impossible, that to stand against the Empire was to invite death. But they also knew that hope was not entirely lost as long as there were those who remembered the Republic. The ideals of freedom would survive, even in the face of the Empire's iron rule. Coruscant, though subdued, was not yet defeated. Its people watched, waited, and in the quiet spaces between fear and obedience, the first whispers of rebellion began to stir. The Empire might have taken the city, but the spirit of Coruscant, battered and bruised, was not yet extinguished. And as the first day under Imperial rule unfolded, a sense of resilience settled in the hearts of those who refused to accept the darkness that had fallen over their world. As the days wore on, the reality of the Empire's presence became inescapable for the people of Coruscant. Troopers maintained an unyielding vigilance, their patrols increasing in frequency and intensity. Military checkpoints appeared at every major intersection, slowing movement throughout the city and enforcing strict curfews. Citizens found themselves subject to random identification checks, searched without warning, and questioned if they lingered too long in public spaces. This new state of life transformed Coruscant into a city of whispers, where once vibrant voices were silenced by fear. The Jedi Temple, now gutted and empty, served as a haunting symbol of the fallen order. Its once proud towers loomed over the skyline, now silent and cold, casting long shadows over the city as a stark reminder of the Empire's reach. The Empire wasted no time in repurposing the temple. It became both a military stronghold and a propaganda tool. Large banners bearing the Empire's symbol were draped over its ancient walls, a chilling proclamation of Palpatine's control. Any mention of the Jedi's former deeds was forbidden, and the temple's presence, once a point of pride for Coruscant, became a source of dread. The citizens began to adjust, though not willingly, to their altered lives. Businesses operated under heavy scrutiny, and any talk of the Jedi or of the Republic was strictly discouraged. Many of the planet's wealthier inhabitants had accepted the new order with barely a murmur, as Palpatine's promises of stability appealed to those who valued security over freedom. However, for the lower classes and marginalized communities, the Empire's rule was a constant reminder of the oppressive power that now dominated their lives. These people, who had seen the Jedi as their protectors, now found themselves with no advocate, no one to champion their cause. Among these pockets of society, the seeds of rebellion took root. Smugglers, black market dealers, and former Republic loyalists found common ground, their alliances forming under a shared mistrust of the Empire. They began small acts of resistance, sabotaging Imperial equipment, disrupting supply lines, and passing coded messages to those willing to stand against the Empire. The underground was growing, an informal network of people who believed that the Empire's reign was neither justified nor inevitable. Although uncoordinated and often at odds with each other's methods, this fledgling resistance knew that its survival depended on secrecy and solidarity. For the Jedi who had escaped the purge, life became a shadowed existence. They took refuge in the city's underbelly, hiding in places few dared to venture. Former allies and trusted contacts provided aid when they could, but each offer of help was a risk, both for the Jedi and those harboring them. These Jedi operated in complete secrecy, never revealing themselves or their true identities. Some adopted disguises, blending into the populace as healers, teachers, or laborers. But even in hiding, they felt the constant pressure of the Empire's search, knowing that the slightest mistake could reveal their presence. Among these scattered survivors was a former Jedi Knight named Laran Duwan. Having fought valiantly in the Clone Wars, he now wandered the darker alleys of Coruscant, a broken man haunted by the betrayal of Order 66. Laran had lost friends, mentors, and his faith in the Republic he once served. He kept his lightsaber hidden, a relic of a life he could no longer live. His survival was not born of hope, but of instinct, a determination to continue as a living witness to the Empire's crimes. For Laran and others like him, survival meant bearing the burden of memory, a memory that they could share with no one, lest it endanger themselves and those they held dear. Palpatine, ever vigilant, continued to tighten his grip on the city. He used fear as a weapon, spreading rumors of Jedi traitors who still lurked among the populace, ready to strike against the Empire. This tactic sowed distrust within communities, turning friends and neighbors into informants for the Empire. The ISB Imperial Security Bureau began monitoring civilian activities, searching for any hint of Jedi sympathizers. This network of spies and informants created a culture of paranoia, a world where even the smallest act of kindness could be perceived as an act of defiance. The city that once thrived on connection and cooperation was now fractured, every bond of trust weakened by the Empire's subtle manipulations. Meanwhile, the propaganda machine continued its work, rewriting history to suit the Empire's agenda. Holoscreens across Coruscant played scenes of Palpatine's supposed rescue of the galaxy, portraying him as the only figure capable of bringing order from the chaos left by the Republic. The Jedi were depicted as corrupt and power-hungry, their contributions erased or twisted to fit this new narrative. Children in schools were taught that the Jedi had sought to overthrow the government, that they had deceived and manipulated the people. Over time, these lies began to take root, especially among the young and impressionable. An entire generation was being shaped by the Empire's vision, their memories of the Republic dimming as the Empire forged its identity upon their minds. Despite the harsh conditions, there were those who kept hope alive. In hidden corners of the city, former Republic sympathizers and idealists met in secret, sharing stories of the Jedi and of the Republic's values. They spoke of justice, freedom, and the possibility of a galaxy without fear. These gatherings were rare and dangerous, for any gathering of more than a few people risked drawing the Empire's attention. But those who attended these meetings clung to them as a lifeline, a reminder that there was still goodness in the galaxy, still people who remembered what it meant to be free. Some of these groups began circulating messages of hope through coded holo broadcasts, a silent rebellion against the Empire's propaganda. Simple messages, phrases like "Remember the Republic" or "Hope Lives" appeared on the walls of back alleys, or as fleeting symbols in unauthorized broadcasts. The Empire worked tirelessly to erase these messages, but new ones would appear, spread by those who refused to surrender to despair. These symbols became beacons for those who could still see beyond the Empire's shadow, a reminder that the spirit of resistance, however small, was not yet extinguished. As the first weeks of the Empire's rule unfolded, Coruscant became a city suspended between two realities. On the surface, it was a world of order, stability, and unity under the Emperor's control. But beneath that facade, in the hidden places and the minds of those who remembered the truth, the city still harbored the last remnants of the Republic's ideals. It was a fragile resistance, barely noticeable, amid the Empire's overwhelming presence, yet it persisted. Coruscant's citizens, though subdued, still carried memories of the Jedi, memories that the Empire could not erase completely. And while the people walked the streets in silence, their thoughts whispered of a time before the Empire, a time when freedom had been more than a memory. Each person, each hidden rebel, each silent act of defiance kept alive the flicker of hope, a hope that, one day, the darkness would lift. The city of Coruscant had become a fortress of the Empire, a center of its strength and control. But no empire could conquer every mind, and as long as there were those who remembered, who shared stories of the Republic, who believed in the possibility of a better future, the spirit of resistance would endure. It was a small, fragile hope, but in the shadow of the Empire, even the smallest light could be enough.